Okay, we're going to do a video today that's a little bit different, but a lot of people ask me this. What's the difference between a serial killer's natal chart and a completely normal person's natal chart that just might happen to be the same as a serial killer's? So let's have a little look at some. Now, I've got John Wayne Gacy's natal chart here. He was born on the 17th of March 1942, Chicago, Illinois, at 29 minutes past midnight. Now, that's the important thing. That's, he was born at that specific time, at that specific place, so it gave him this chart. So to have the same chart exactly as John Wayne Gacy, you would have had to have been born in the same vicinity, Chicago, Illinois, at 29 minutes past midnight on the 17th of March 1942. And then you would have exactly the same chart as him. So what makes him different to, let's pretend this is John Smith, who doesn't go and kill people, who doesn't kill 33 boys and bury them under his house like John Wayne Gacy did? Well, it's pretty easy. It's not one or the other with astrology. It's not just all nurture, all nature. Are we born to kill? Are we not? It's a complete picture of everything. So we are born with the propensity to be able to do whatever our chart enables us to do. It's the way that we're raised, it's our family, it's health conditions that we get along the way. Most often these killers get a knock in the head at some point, so the brain starts to not work properly. It's a whole bunch of factors, and most often it's childhood trauma, sexual assault, all sorts of horrific things. And it's true, it does happen, and that does produce people that do things like this. Sometimes they have normal upbringings, but people do bad things. But John Smith could be born right next door, in the bed next to John Wayne Gacy's mother. Maybe they gave birth at the exact same minute, which is very, not likely, mind you. Of course, all around the world somebody would be born at that time, but not in Chicago, Illinois, at that 87 degrees west 39 and 41 north 51, at that latitude and longitude. So the chances of someone having an exact chart are slim, unless John Wayne Gacy has a twin. And even then there'll be a few minutes difference. It's not the same. So why is John Wayne Gacy a psycho and John Smith a normal dude? And the answer is exactly that. John Smith uses his Sagittarian ascendant to go traveling and experience the world. He's adventurous and he loves, he's a Sagittarian type of guy to look at. This is John Smith I'm talking about. John Smith is somebody that has intense feelings about relationships and loves quite deeply, because Jupiter is conjunct Mars here. And I can see that John Smith has probably got some issues with his mum and dad. But we don't have any history on John Smith, so we don't know, but he didn't kill anybody, this imaginary John Smith. But now let's look at it as John Wayne Gacy. The ascendant shows how you are. So he appeared to be a very fun-loving guy. He was into everything, having parties and all the Sagittarian things. He had a wife. He appeared as though he was in love. He had and this is the same scenario. He had issues with his mum and dad. But we know his history. We know that he grew up with issues. So there lie the difference. He has utilized his chart in the only way he knows And the only way he knows how to utilize his chart is through his upbringing, and his upbringing is what molded him. And now his parents, they themselves have their own natal charts that show how they parent. So John Smith, his parents don't have the same natal chart as John Wayne Gacy. You know, if there's a soul contract in life, if you come through certain parents for a reason, if some people believe that, I think it's sounds very possible. John Wayne Gacy came through with the hard lessons of this parenting, but his parents also came through with their lessons. And John Smith, who has this chart as well, may have had hard parents and whatnot, but their charts may have been easier. Their natal charts may have been quite compatible together, and maybe they broke up amicably. Maybe they remained friends, and they raised John Smith to be the most outstanding citizen that you can imagine. And that's their stuff, you know. So it's not a static thing. We can't just look at a chart and go, oh, this is an evil person. I would never be able to, I mean, you don't see the name on this even, but I think you can see Gacy there. I thought I was pointing to it before, and I don't know if you actually saw it, but so this chart could be anybody's, but it isn't. It's John Wayne Gacy. But there's nothing in here that tells me the difference between John Wayne Gacy and John Smith. The only difference is we know more about John Wayne Gacy and we know nothing about John Smith. So that might be a strange way to talk about it, but that's how I feel about it. You know, if we didn't know John Wayne Gacy and he was still killing people and he'd got away with it forever, we wouldn't know the difference between him and John Smith. They're still outwardly great people and blah blah. All, you know, he just happened to get caught, and his transits triggered off his natal chart, and he reacted differently because he was brought up differently. He was brought up by parents that had a different view, had a different natal chart, had a different perspective than John Smith's chart. So if we let me grab another chart here. Bundy's just too overused. Sick of using Bundy. This is Dennis Radar's chart, the BTK killer. Okay, so this could be John Smith's chart. Again, same scenario. Look, he's got a Cancer rising. So you would think, well, this man's a homely man. You know, he loves his family. Initially, you're not going to look at it and go, this guy's a killer. You know, I'm trying to have a look here to even see what stands out. There's not a whole lot that stands out to me at all that's even concerning initially. Pluto is opposing Mars, but very widely, 10 degrees, so wide. Mars and Pluto are often, especially when Leo's involved, are often visible in charts of people that kill people, but they're also triggered off. These planets get triggered off. The moon, the sun, which is the mother and the father, get triggered off by transits as they're growing up. So certain things happen to them. So Dennis Rader or Jack Jones, let's say, you know, maybe we've got a 6th house moon here. Dennis Radar's mother might have been overbearing and, you know, constantly mummy cuddling him. She could have been very distant and didn't mummy cuddle him with that Capricorn moon. Jack Jones's mum could be the complete opposite or the same as well, but that doesn't really affect him that badly. Dennis Rader, the relationship he has with women, Venus and square the moon, shows me that there's probably something in his psyche that and his childhood that is his emotional state, his mother and women and how he treated them. But then he killed men as well, so I'll make this one a bit smaller. I don't know why it's so huge. This is Chris Watts. So I've jumped into another one. I just wanted to get through this quickly and not bore everyone to tears. But so Chris Watts was what we thought was just the average guy. But he's not. He murdered his entire family, his pregnant wife, just for no reason. He's an absolute nutcase. But his chart here, I mean, he has Algol on the ascendant, which is not a great sign. Algol is like the demon sign. It's not a fantastic position actually for the ascendant. And his sun is tightly conjunct Algol. So he was a bastard anyway. He would have been a bastard behind closed doors. He would have been an angry man. I haven't even really looked at Chris Watts' chart that much. I did the event chart and the murders and the mapping, but I didn't care for him. It's pissing me off hearing that women were falling in love with him and sending him letters, and it's disgusting. But now that I look at it, it's actually quite. He has an Aries moon conjunct Venus. He would have been very domineering, and also very secretive in his endeavours and activities at home. Mars in the first house, opposite Uranus in the seventh. He just would have been all over the place, this guy. I don't actually like his chart at all looking at it. But okay, so there's a perfect example. If I covered up Chris Watts and turned this into Susan Sarandon, Susan Jones or whatever, I couldn't look at it and go, oh, you're a horrible person. I'd probably say, oh, I think this person's a little bit manipulative and, you know, there's some issues that they've got. But sometimes people just snap. And I think that has to come into it as well. So you need to, what I'm getting at is transits is absolutely imperative. So if it's like you've got the pins all ready to be knocked down in a bowling tournament sort of thing. So they're already lined up, not great. You've then had the nature and nurture thing, you know, may have had health problems, blah, 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 a whole bunch of things. And then you've come to a point where you're having a very pivotal transit. So let me think, what would have been going on? Capricorn, Jupiter, trying to think when it was. I can't do it in my head. I can't remember what transits he would have had at the time. But there would have been something that triggered off this event that happened. And even if Susan Jones had the same chart, who had to have been born in Fayetteville, North Carolina on the 16th of May, 1985 at 6:15 a.m., exactly the same place and time, but if she was born to different parents and if she was born in a different environment, she's grown up differently and utilised things differently. Or Susan's not great either, but she just hasn't killed somebody when that transit's come along. Because ultimately, a person should know the difference between right and wrong. And that's probably the hardest thing to see in a chart. You know, you can't see if someone thinks they know the difference between right and wrong. A lot of times people don't even know themselves if they know the difference between right and wrong. So, you know, a natal chart really doesn't show us too much. Even with serial killers and mass killers and killers, we see repetitive things, and I can absolutely assure you I see a lot of Libra rising, Taurus rising, Sagittarius rising. The rising sign that shows us that these people look approachable and are actually make you go, oh my God, I would have never thought that this guy would have done this. He's been my neighbour for 30 years and, you know, the guy would give you the shirt off of his back, and we never had to close our doors and lock our windows until this happened. You know, that is why the ascendant is more responsible for anything, because a person can act in a way that they like. The rest of the chart needs to be triggered off by a transit. or progression. So I'm not going to take up any more time. That was just a quick video on the difference between why you are not a serial killer, even though you were born the same day as a serial killer. I'm going to actually go through Chris Watts's chart, and I'm going to bring a video up on the mapping with where he buried his poor little children. I hate this guy so much. He's just the worst. I knew immediately, I think everyone did, the minute he came on TV, it was very apparent that he'd done something to his family. I don't know how he thought he was possibly going to get away with that. And there's nothing in his chart that tells me that, because, like I said before, could be Susan's chart, whoever Susan is, you know. I can't tell you. Nobody can tell you. What we can do is layer things upon each other. We can understand what happened behind the scenes and then build a picture. What we need to do is learn how to utilize the event charts, the transits, and the progressions, and keep an eye on people that are susceptible to snap. So if you're aware that you're with somebody that is susceptible to snap, then you can get the hell out of the environment that's going to keep you in that, you know, situation where they're going to snap in front of you. I don't know. There's a few things that you can, you know, I think that you can possibly do if we know ahead of time that something can happen. But then that leads back to the general rule of thumb, is that if someone is treating you bad, Chris Watts was not a nice man. He was horrible to her. He yelled at her. He spoke to her horribly. He had an affair. You know, if you're not nice and you're like him, you're I don't know. Looking at this chart's actually really horrible. He's just. I'd like to see anybody else's chart that's like his, that isn't like him. It's actually made me have to stop and come back again, and I had to pause it quickly and come back because I really don't feel good looking at his chart at all, and I'm really compelled to actually look at some transits online to show you on video what happened to trigger off this guy. Although I don't want to, I'm sick of seeing his name. I don't want to see it anymore. But anyway, so that was my point, is that anybody can be a killer. It takes transits, progressions. If you're with somebody that is aggressive and nasty, just don't be with them. Just leave. It's not worth losing your life over. That's in terms of Chris Watts and people that stay in abusive relationships. Serial killers are a whole different kettle of fish. Anyway, okay, I'll leave it at that because he's really thrown me. I can't stand the guy, and yeah, I don't want to look at his chart anymore. So let's get rid of him. There's Bundy. I'd much rather look at Ted Bundy's chart, to be honest, than Chris Watts. I don't even know what it is about that guy. Now, Ted Bundy's no saint, that's for sure. He was a complete arsewipe. But he doesn't look as angry as Chris Watts' chart did. Anyway, I'm going on a tangent now. Catch you later, guys. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll be back soon. See ya.